And I wanted to give you an update on a story we've been following. In fact, we did it on the program last Wednesday. It is a sexual abuse case at Horace Greeley School in Chappaqua. On last week's program, we told you about this man, Christopher Schroffnagel. He's a former drama teacher. He was arrested late last year after allegations of sexual abuse surfaced against 14 and 15-year-olds. He pleaded guilty to 3 counts of child endangerment. He admitted 2 of those cases involved sexual contact with students. Court documents showed the school knew about accusations potentially as far back as 2011. Now, he's not looking at jail time, but the question is, obviously with the civil case now coming, where is the culpability on the part not just of this teacher, but certainly of the school district? Now, the district has been criticized, in my eyes, very rightly so, by some for the handling of this case. In its response to the lawsuit, and again now, 14 and 15-year-old children, okay, that were groped by this teacher. Well, the district attorney wrote that the students themselves were, quote, the representative for the school, for the district said that the children themselves were negligent and reckless, again, minors. Now, the Journal News is reporting, quote, that the school went one step further. The lawyer for the school has filed new motions in 2 of the cases, and they're arguing that while the students' names may be kept private, the names of their parents should be made public before the cases proceed. Unbelievable. And of course, this is more than raising eyebrows. This will continue. They had a chance to take this into private mediation. The school chose not to do this. The school, which had been advised and warned about this teacher, who never notified the parents, is now basically taking their fight against the children as well as their families. I've never seen anything like this. We've seen terrible cases, but the handling of it by a school district, beyond me. Okay, let's now pivot to a look at kids in trouble, not of that variety, but whether or not their parents should be in trouble with the law. This video out of Washington State shows a man tossing his girlfriend's 4-year-old son off a bridge. Now, both adults, they're facing reckless endangerment charges, and the sheriff's office and Child Protective Services are investigating. If you hear the audio, this kid obviously not on board with the idea of being thrown off the bridge, his mother cackling in the background. Now, we see stories, unfortunately, in my business, if not on a weekly, on a daily basis, about parents leaving their kids in hot cars while they shop or do errands. Then there is, of course, Anthony Weiner. Everyone agrees the guy's a weirdo and a creep, but also, what about the judgment or non-judgment he showed when he sent a picture of himself and his young son here to a young lady who is not his wife, and later on in text talks about the kid being used as a chick magnet. Distasteful, but did he break laws? Now, Albany is threatening to do something about this. State Senator Ruben Diaz, he's calling on the City Child Protective Services Department to investigate the former New York congressman. But it brings up a broader issue, and I'll start with you, Mayo, in that there seems to be a fungible line, or a very discretionary line, whether it be Child Protective Services, whether it be family court, to say that was idiotic, or now it's time, I'm going to take the kids out and put them in a safer environment. Who's Solomon here in a realistic way? Who really makes the decision to say, I put the kid in foster care, that's not a walk in the park, maybe I try and fix the screwed up parent, or I just give the kid to the other parent? It just seems that case by case you get 2 totally different outcomes.
It's going to be up to the district attorney's office if they believe there's enough information to go forward with criminal charges. Also, the county attorney's office generally will be able to look at civil matters along with child protective. And ultimately, it'll also come down to, if it goes into court, what a judge decides. And with respect to Mr. Weiner's photographs, the question is, are you on the borderline of child pornography? Because at some point, if you have a child in a situation in a photograph where he or she is depicted in a sexually explicit image, and that is transmitted to another person, it's illegal for anyone in the United States to actually...
This time.
Well, the child had the kid in the bed with him while he took his pictures of his own junk.
Well, but if the child is there in that picture, I don't know. Let's put it this way. If
The child wasn't naked. The child wasn't posed near his,
No,
what.
but we've
why the child is
established
there.
that this is a
About virility
parent
and
with bad
masculinity.
discretion. However, we can find millions of parents with bad discretion. But it has the ick and the creep factor where you can
Yeah.
say visitation rights will be curbed as a result,
No.
because it certainly looks like they're headed to divorce.
No, legally, poor judgment has nothing to do with it. There's a very clear standard for CPS, and that's abuse and neglect. Not only do you have to find evidence of physical or verbal abuse or neglect, but you have to find a preponderance of the evidence, meaning 51% of the evidence points toward the likelihood that that happened. And even in some cases where there is a likelihood that that happened, they'll just bring in community services. They won't even take the kid away unless there's an imminent risk to the child's
But there's
safety.
definitely impact in their divorce proceeding, custody and visitation issues for sure. If
But
he's
you
an
may
unfit
also-
parent.
I don't think so. Why? Because
Oh, yeah.
he's flirting with a woman
No,
and,
if he's
and
using his kid as a
tweeting.
If he's
So that has
sending
nothing to do-
pornographic pictures in while the child is in his bed,
Yeah.
you can bet that's going to be
And you
litigated
can
in a divorce
conceivably
case
have
on
criminal
custody
charges
and
here. You could
visitation.
file endangering the welfare of a child because that's injurious to the mental, moral, or physical well-being of the child.
If the child were old enough to understand
Well,
what was
not
going
necessarily. That's not necessarily part of the statute. The statute is conduct that is physically damaging, possibly damaging to the mental, moral, or physical well-being of that child.
on. But because it was on social media, it's invisible conduct, meaning the child didn't hear or see anything.
Well,
That
we don't-
child is not going through CPS. He's not going through the system. The child is not going to be taken away. Huma Abedin is going to be the custodial parent, and his reckless behavior over a long period of time will definitely be factored in.
Okay,
in
now
Because
let's-
he's
custody
now-
and
guys,
visitation.
Why?
Now, guys-
Because he's a horny man? That has
Because
nothing
that-
to do
No,
with
no,
this.
there's-
Come
I would
on.
think,
Wait,
I would think
wait,
there's a
wait,
difference
because in
between
the
being a perv
in
and
the-
involving your child
in the
in your
domestic
pervy
But
actions.
relations-
men do this all the time.
No,
There
I
are
don't know
men-
one guy.
We
who
take
No,
did
offense
there are
to
men
that.
who
That
go
is-
on
that's-
Twitter and flirt with women and send pictures all
In
the
the
time.
With
It
their
just
kid in the
law-
picture?
Well, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that doesn't have a bearing on custody, whether a man wants to. There are men out there who have joint custody who are with
There will
tons of
be-
women. They're known
there will be
womanizers,
a-
and they're with.
in
They
the-
have joint
In the
custody.
divorce proceeding, there will be a guardian ad litem appointed to represent the child's interest. She will obviously be the custodial parent, and the judge, the family court judge, making a determination as to what's in the best interest of the child, will set a custody and visitation schedule. And if she can show that he's a reckless parent who's a menace, whose behavior is deleterious to the child's well-being, it will be factored into the private custody
Now-
and visitation schedule.
Where do you think, Chris, is there a clear line? Because, look, I saw that picture or the video of them throwing the kid off the bridge, right? You say to yourself, what idiot would not only participate, but would find that funny in the background as a parent to let some boyfriend or whatever throw him off the bridge? But it seems to me, you have 5 kids go through that same thing in 5 different parts of this country. Maybe one, there's a father in the picture. There's one, there isn't a father in the picture. Maybe the mother had gotten a DWI the year before and she didn't have it here. It just seems to me there isn't a bright line between which kid goes, which kids get taken out of the home and which one isn't.
No, definitely. And I think it has to do with the perspective of how you're seeing it, right? So what's happening now that didn't happen maybe 20 years ago is that there's video of everything. That's right. So everywhere you look, it's like people that the momentum builds of people getting more and more upset about seeing that, and then there's going to be consequences. Whereas if there was just a write-up of what had happened, maybe it wouldn't be that
Far-
big.
far be it
It wouldn't
from
be
me.
looked at as that big a deal.
Yep.
Let me just say, it's very dangerous that everybody's always rushing to report things to CPS, because CPS is required to follow up on every single call within 24 hours and do an exhaustive investigation. What happens is that if a child is taken away from their parents and it's not merited, which happens all the time, a lot of times they're put into homes where far worse things happen. They're raped,
Time out
they're
one second.
killed.
I think you're right, but just for time purposes, you see the video. There's no debating the video and the idiocy involved in it. If the court decides to say, okay, we're not going to overreact here, we don't have a rap sheet on this, mom, don't do it again.
Oh, no,
okay?
the child's clearly at risk of, the physical safety is
So
at
you
risk.
take the kid out of the house.
I don't know that I would. I mean, there's so many factors that need to be examined, but I would just say that in cases like the Anthony Weiner case, I think it's much safer
right.
to say you shouldn't rush to take
Just
that
really
child
quick,
away.
Mayo, because I got 30 seconds.
We gotta look
Should
at-
we be comfortable as a general public that's not involved in family court or DIFUS or whatever else, that they get these things right, that they have the right thresholds, or is it on a catch-as-catch can basis?
I think we need to have thresholds, but you also have to look at cultural norms, and it goes back to when we talked about it maybe last year, where the kid was at the shooting range with the AK-47 and turned and shot and killed the person who was there. So a lot of things that are acceptable maybe in the Northeast may not be acceptable in the Midwest, may not be acceptable in the South.
Well, anything goes in the Pacific Northwest. There are survivalists out there. They're just teaching them how
Hopefully
to
throwing
survive.
kids
You know
off
that.
bridges isn't acceptable in any part of the
You got
country.
to survive, Rich.
I guess. Coming up next, government already regulates the pharmaceutical industry. Nothing can even hit market without formal FDA approval. We all know that, and we all agree with that. But the question is, why can't it also control prices, especially when drug companies massively hike the price of life-saving meds that only they produce? Stay with us.